Hi there, this is Shivam. In the last video, we discussed how to integrate Vertex with Spring Boot, but the scope of that video included the deployment of a single instance of a vertical. In this video, we'll continue with the same project and enhance it so that it allows us to deploy multiple instances of a vertical. So here, I have opened the project showcased in the last video. First, we'll go to the main vertical class. This class is declared as a Spring component using the @component annotation. Now let's switch to the Vertex runner class. Here we can see that we have auto-wired the main vertical and then in the run method we are deploying it. The vertex.deployVerticle method takes deployment options in one of its overloads. So we can specify the number of vertical instances that we need. But if we run this application, we'll encounter an exception. The application exited because of an error can't specify greater than one instances for already created vertical. So now let's understand this problem a bit deeper. We encountered this error because Vertex allows us to specify multiple instances when it creates the vertical object itself using the class reference, the vertical class name, or a vertical instance supplier. But in this case, we cannot pass the vertical name or vertical class reference because the Vertex doesn't know how to create a vertical which has a constructor that takes arguments. But we can use the vertical supplier overload and we can create a new instance every time the supplier is called. That way, we will be able to deploy multiple vertical instances. So here is how we can achieve that. First, we'll move back to the main vertical class. Let's remove the @component annotation from the main vertical as we don't want Spring Boot to create the default single instance. Instead, we'll create the instance of the main vertical by calling the constructor. We'll also remove the other Spring specific annotations from this class, such as autowired and @value. Next, we'll move back to the Vertex runner class. We can remove the main vertical autowiring. So I'll remove the main vertical field declaration. I'll also remove the constructor initialization. And we can remove the parameter also. Now we'll autowire the router and the server port in this class. Integer server port. I'll do constructor injection. Here for server port, we need to define the property value. So I'll define @value. Within that, we can define dollar curly bracket vertex dot server dot port. We'll modify the vertex dot deploy vertical to use the supplier and creates the main vertical. So here we can replace main vertical with a supplier lambda and we can create new main vertical and we can pass in router as well as server port. Now, if we run the application again, we can see the HTTP server log appearing 10 times. We can check the thread name as well and observe that each of these threads was printed by a different event loop thread. Although this works, but there is a cleaner way to achieve the same, especially if you need to access the main vertical instances. For that, let's first define a property for the vertex instance count. So I'll go to the application.properties. In here, I'll define vertex.instance dot count and let's assign 10. Now I'll go to the configurations and I'll declare a bean which will return a list of main vertical. So at the rate bean public list of main vertical, I'll import the list. Let's name the method as get main verticals and we'll auto wire router, and I'll also auto wire the server port. So at the rate value, I can pass dollar curly bracket vertex dot server dot port, and this will give us integer server port. We also need to auto wire the vertex instance count. So at the rate value, again curly bracket vertex dot instance dot count, and this will be integer. Let's call it instance count. So from this method, we'll create a list of main vertical and return it. So we'll return int stream dot range 0 comma instance count dot boxed dot map. We'll get index here, but we are not using it. We can just say new main vertical, pass in the router and server port, and we can call dot to list. So now we have a bean of list of main vertical. Now we can move to the vertex runner class and we can remove the router and the server port. I'll remove from the constructor also. Instead, we'll now auto wire the list of main vertical. I'll call it main vertical list. So now we have auto wired the main vertical list and we'll use member of this list in the supplier. Before that, let's auto wire the vertex count as well so that we can put a safety check. So I'll put private integer vertex instance count, and I'll add the constructor parameter and we'll have to put at the rate value here, dollar curly bracket vertex dot instance dot count. Now we'll modify the deploy vertical method. I'll expand the lambda body. Outside in the run, I'll declare a new atomic integer with the initial value as 0 because that's where the index will start. Inside supplier, we can remove this main vertical. Instead, we can call atomic integer dot get and increment. This will give us the index. If index greater than equal to vertex instance count, will throw a illegal state exception. Although this will not happen as we are using the same property for the vertex instance count, but it's good to have a safety check. And down here we'll return main vertical list dot get and we'll pass in the index. So now if we'll run the application again, we can see that we are getting the same output. So with these two ways, you can deploy multiple vertical instances within the Spring Boot application. That's it for this video. Thanks for staying tuned. If this video was helpful, press the like button and subscribe to the channel for the future videos. If you have questions or want me to cover some other topics, please comment below the video. Thank you.